Hey everyone, and welcome to this training. My name is Jenna Schwenard, Marketing Consultant at PCA Technology Group, and I'll help host this event. Before I hand it over to our speaker today, I want to thank you in advance for joining us. At PCA, we are committed to always taking things up a notch and helping our clients reach new heights, which is exactly why we've launched PCA University and teamed up with Microsoft to offer these complimentary sessions. This is our second one out of 4 for the remainder of this year, with today's focus on the calling and meeting features of Teams. I also want to note that a Lenovo gift card will be raffled to one attendee after each training, so be on the lookout via email to see if you are a lucky winner for today. And as we go through these roughly 45 minutes to an hour together, please submit any questions you have and we'll make sure to get to them. But with that being said, it's a pleasure to hand it off to the Microsoft team.
Thank you, Jenna. Hello, everyone. Welcome on in to your Microsoft hosted session. We're going to be talking about calling and meetings within Teams. Let me go ahead and move my slide forward. Oops, that was the wrong one. There we go. But before we do that, let's go over a brief round of, or let's look over our Teams live event environment first. I know it's not every day that we work within one, so I just want to make sure that you guys have the core capabilities to interact in our session today. Located at the bottom of your screen is the meeting control bar, and on the left side of that bar, you have your play pause toggle and the volume control. And then traveling off to the right side of that bar, you have your closed captions toggle in case you need them. You have the settings cog next to that, which will house the settings for those captions, your video quality options, and the ability to change your playback speed if needed. And then right outside of that cog, you have your go to full screen option. Now, during a Teams live event, your camera and microphone are both disabled, so we can't see or hear you guys. However, you'll have the Q&A panel that located on the right side of your screen to submit any and all questions, comments, or concerns. Now, if I remember correctly, this was recently changed to where it's not automatically opened for you anymore. No worries, though. If you look up in the top right corner of the event screen, you'll see a question mark inside some comment bubbles. If you click into that, it'll open up or tuck away that Q&A panel for you. If you'd like a little practice now on question submission, feel free to do so. You can send us whatever you'd like. If you want to give us a quick, hey, what's up? Good morning, evening, afternoon. We would love to see some excitement and engagement starting and popping off in that chat. So that is a general overview of how to work and interact within a Teams live event. Let's do some intros for your training team. So hello, everyone. Why is my... I shouldn't be seeing that, sorry. Screen windows are bleeding here over into other windows. Hello, everyone. My name is Bubba. So if you've seen the movie Forrest Gump, hopefully that helps you remember the name. I'm a training associate here at Microsoft, been with the company for about 5 years now, and I'm certified within a list of Microsoft products. So hopefully you feel in good hands. I also have one of my colleagues on the call, Rochelle, who is a 3-year Microsoft employee, also a training associate here, and is dedicated to education and succession planning. She'll be our event moderator, mostly tucked away in that Q&A, answering all of those questions about the topic today. Rochelle will also be here in the event that you guys lose me, maybe due to a power outage or my Wi-Fi goes down. Rochelle will be able to step into my place to ensure that all of y'all's content gets delivered. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to experience the Teams meeting lifecycle. We're going to learn to schedule, join, and collaborate in meetings. And then lastly, we're going to learn to set up call settings and make calls. Now, like I said, today's topic is calling and meetings. And the really cool thing about these two is that they're actually very, very similar in what they offer and what the experience looks like and feels like. There's just going to be some key differences between the two, between setup and the experience within it. I'll show you exactly what that means as we start interacting a bit more in the demonstration. Now, Microsoft Teams meetings are basically a virtual shared space where in the past we would have had to all meet up in a conference room or somewhere public or somewhere at the office, right? Well, Teams meetings allows us to meet people where they're at, regardless if there are colleagues that are maybe working from home still at this time or working in a hybrid environment, or having customers across the globe, or across the country. Let's bring it back a little bit, right? This creates a virtual space for us to do that physical meeting space. Now, when we get into the actual meeting environment, there's going to be a few features I just can't show you guys today due to lack of having a set number of attendees in the meeting, or in my virtual machine, there's a couple things that are disabled, like camera and microphone. So when it comes to those types of features, I can't necessarily show them to y'all, but I promise I'll do my best to explain how they work, right? Now, your Teams meetings and calls don't have to be done on a desktop. The desktop version of Teams, it can be done in the web portal, the desktop app, and mobile devices too. So if you have access to downloading your work stuff on your cell phone, you can just go to the App Store, search Microsoft Teams, and you can basically access the entire app from your cell phone as well. So, you know, in case you're on the go and don't have access to Wi-Fi to use from your computer, you have this option as well. With this being said, let's go ahead and hop into our demonstration. The screen's going to go blank for just a moment. I'm switching my screens. Give me just a moment here. We don't want that. Okay. So today's demonstration will be held in the calendar section of, well, the first half of our session will be held in the calendar section of Teams, and we can verify that off to the left-hand rail here. I'm also going to be doing today's demo in the Teams desktop app. So if you're following along and you come across a feature that I just mentioned and you're realizing you're not seeing it, that's maybe because you're using the web-based version of Teams. And just like all other Office or Microsoft products, the desktop versus the web version, they're slightly different. Web is a more simple and easy to use view where it doesn't have all of the features, just some key features, whereas the desktop version is the more robust version of the software. So that way you have access to everything. Just keep that in mind. So for this first half, we're going to be staying in calendar, and we're first going to go over the general overview of navigation, what it looks like to be invited to a meeting, and go through the meeting creation process, and then some key features, well, all the features found within a meeting. Once we do that, we'll look at some after meeting resources that are available to us, and then we'll go over into calls and have that very brief moment of this is just the slight key differences you'll find here. So inside your calendar, let's start across the top. You have some standard navigation when it comes to navigating a calendar, things like changing up your view, right? By standard, you have your by default, you have your standard work week, which is a Monday through Friday. However, you can change that to do a Sunday through Saturday or even a daily if needed. Traveling off to the left side here, we have where we can progress forward in our calendar. So this would progress me forward entire weeks at a time, or I could click this drop down and progress entire months. And all I have to do to get back to which the current date is just click on today here, and this will bring me back to the current week. Moving on down, you see all these purple blocks on my calendar. These are a mixture of meetings that I've invited to or that I've created, some focus time that I might have set up through Viva Insights, Teams live events, like we're currently working with on today. These will all be found on our calendar. When we look at these little purple blocks, they actually give us some key information, things like the title of this meeting, if it's pinned to a channel or a location, and who sent out these invites. Now, you'll notice that some of these blocks have little icons in the bottom right corner. This is giving us other types of key information, things like if it's been added to a channel, like we see this one here with the square icon, or if it's a meeting that repeats itself, either a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a bi-weekly or a weekly, right? We see this arrow icon next to it. We can do a single click into any of these meetings and get a bit more expanded view of the details of this meeting. This will give us things like date and time. This is where we can even join or RSVP for the meeting, saying that we're going to accept, decline, or be tentative. That's not the best example. I'm sorry. I picked a, there we go. Let's do this one. Accept, be tentative, or decline. We can also choose to chat with the participants and create a group chat, or open up the chat rather, that's given to this meeting. So if I click on chat with participants, you'll see that we can access all of the chat history that's been utilized already. You can also choose to right click on a meeting too. So let's go ahead and do that now. This gives a lot of the stuff that we've already looked at, right? Chat, joining, responses. We can even categorize. So this actually pulls categories if you've created any within Outlook. So your calendar within Teams and in Outlook are synonymous. They'll show all the same events. This will also utilize the same categories. Now, I don't have any set up in my demo tenant. I will tell you though, in my actual work environment, I have an ungodly amount of categories. This just really helps me organize my events. As a trainer, I have, meetings on my calendar from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. And knowing through my categories helps me, utilizing my categories helps me know exactly what I'm getting into and what my day looks like, simply based off of how I tagged them. So for this meeting here, let's say that I wanted to tag this with the red category, meaning that this is a one-on-one I have with Nestor. I now can see that directly on my calendar. Or maybe I am supposed to be leading this session for our digital offsite. I want to go ahead and tag this one. That's a channel meeting. Let's say that I want to categorize this one right here with green for our one-on-one discussion, or the meeting that I was leading, rather. I could do so. So that's your right click. We can also double click into a meeting invite and get an expanded details view. This will show us things like who all was added and tracked as an attendee, right? We can see other information. If there was a description for this meeting invite, we'd actually find that right here. We see that there's even notes that were taken. And if we look across the top, we have other pinnable resources that were added to this invite. We'll take a look at how we can do that and what these all mean in just a moment. Now, one other item I want to look at before we move further is this area across the bottom here. All of this stuff is automatically generated for you when you create a meeting invite. You'll see things like click here to join the meeting, so you can actually send out a link. A meeting ID and passcode are created for you, so if you'd prefer to provide these credentials rather than an invite, you could do so. And then also a dial-in number for users that may not have Teams. Now, I do want to asterisk this and say this may be a feature turned off through your organization. So just keep that in mind. But essentially the dial-in number, like I said, is for those people that either A, don't have Teams, or they don't have Teams readily available on the devices they're working with. So this allows them to use their mobile phone. They call into the conference ID here, hit the pound, I'm sorry, this number here. Once they call this number, they give an automated message, and they have to put in this conference ID with the pound sign here. And then they're directed into your meeting. Okay, so that's just the intro, right? Let's go ahead and create our own meeting, see what that process looks like, and then we'll hop into the meeting and look at those features available to us. So in the top right corner, you have where you can create a new meeting. This is where you complete it exclusively from scratch. There's one other way to create a meeting through Teams, and that is clicking a time slot and date directly on your calendar. So you see, as I move through, we have it's being highlighted in this column of what time slot I want to select. So let's say that I want to select for 11 a.m. on Thursday. I find that slot, click into it, and just like that, I've created started the meeting creation process. So let's go ahead and add a title. And if you've ever created a meeting invite through Outlook, this experience is the exact same. But let's go through it for those that haven't. So at the top, we have our title. I'm going to call this let's call this our weekly roundup. I want to provide a space for my colleagues to talk about all of our wins and our opportunities for the week. And I want to be able to invite some leadership into these invites for showing off the things that we're accomplishing throughout the week, right? If they can make it. The next section down is our attendees. Who do we want to be there, right? And there's two fields. There is the required and optional attendees. And the best way that I can relate this to something else is when you CC someone on an email. They don't necessarily need the information, but they don't need to respond to the information, but adding them to the thread gives them insight as to what's going on, keep me updated, stuff like that. This is kind of the same thing if you want to view it that way, where optional attendees don't have to be here in the meeting, but if they have the time available, they are more than welcome to join in. They already have the link. So in this example, I'm going to add my colleagues that I want to actually talk about their wins and opportunities for the week, which are going to be Lynn, Lydia, and Joanna. Now for my optionals, I'm going to add a couple directors here, which is Nestor and Lee. And you'll notice that as I start adding people to this invite, we get a little status message below their names. We have Lynn that's sensitive, Lydia's even actually busy during this time, and everyone else is free. What's happening here is the scheduling assistant AI in the backend is taking into account everyone's statuses at this time that we selected, which to confirm, we selected the 11 a.m. time slot on the 20th. Below our date and time selector, we have 3 suggested times that are actually pulling from the scheduling assistant. And this is essentially taking everyone's calendar and saying these 3 times seem to work best for everyone. If I click on this 1:30 to 2 time slot, notice how now everyone's status changes to free. We can actually take a deeper dive into the scheduling assistant at the top here as one of the tabs. Let's go ahead and do so now and get a visual representation of what this looks like. Now we can see there are different time blocks on everyone else's calendar throughout the day. And this is where I can take the slider too and maybe click and drag this over to the 3:15 time slot, right? Now it's not going to show me everyone's details of their meetings, but it will just say, hey, this person's busy during this time or tentative, right? They've got focus time over here. So it will, oh, that's my calendar, but it will show you little blocks on their calendar for when they're not available. When creating a meeting within Teams, your default time frame is a 30-minute window. You can change that to whatever fits best for that meeting. Let's say that I want my weekly roundup to actually be 45 minutes. So I can actually come in here and change that to 4. And we now see that I've structured that for 45 minutes. Or I could come in and type it. Say I wanted this to be to end at 4:10. Oops. I could come in and make my own time frame. All right, below our date and time selector is our repetition. This can be set on a weekly, a weekday, monthly, or even a custom setup where it's like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, right? However you see fit, you can make that customized for your experience. Below that is our adding to a channel. I'm actually going to skip this today. If we have time at the end, I will go back over this in the Q&A and during our Q&A time. The reason I'd like to skip this is because everything that I teach, not everything, but a lot of what I teach you today, it's a little different whenever you add a channel. Not a whole lot. It's just some mild things that can be a little confusing. So we're just going to leave it alone for now. And like I said, if we have time at the end, we'll come back to it. Next is adding a location. So this is where you can actually request conference rooms if they've been set up in your system to either A, create this invite and say, hey, we're actually going to meet up in this conference room, or maybe you're creating a hybrid meeting where there's people that are working from home and then you have people that are actually at the office and can utilize those conference rooms. You can actually reserve that from Teams. So for example, if I wanted to look up conference room Adam, it actually looks like it's not been booked by anyone else. So that time slot, it is free. And then lastly is our description. This is where I can say things like, please have your end of week recaps ready. Let's put a smiley face in there. There, now we filled out all of our invite details, but we're not quite finished, or we have more features available to us rather. So across the top, in between the invite details and the tabs I showed y'all earlier is this little bar. Let's call it the ribbon. Here is where we can do things like changing how we're shown during this time. By default, you're usually busy, but you can also be tentative, working elsewhere out of office, right? You can actually categorize this out the gate. So let's say that I want my end of week or weekly roundup to be in blue, because that's what I've labeled that category. We also have where we can change the time zone. This will be to your default time zone. However, this is really useful whenever you're working with people in other time zones, and you, instead of doing the conversion and trying to do all that math yourself or finding those online resources, it's actually built into the system here. So let's say that I had someone in Monterrey. I could actually look up their time zone, and they told me, hey, 3:15 p.m. on the 20th in my time. Perfect. Instead of me trying to do those conversions myself, I'll actually have Teams take over. I create the invite and their time zone. And when I hit send, it'll send the invite for their date and time on the invite since we changed the time zone. But what will happen on my side is it will actually convert that for me to whatever my time zone would be. So it takes all the heavy lifting out. Next to that is our response options. In your Teams meeting, these are both turned on by default. So things like the request responses, this top option, are things like accepting, declining, or being tentative to a meeting, and then allowing forwarding. So this means that anyone that's been added to this invite can then forward it out to someone else that may not have been added originally, so that they have that meeting invite too. Last is registration. I'm going to be really honest. You may not use this. This is something that is added to a Teams meeting, but is a default within a webinar. Webinars are a different experience. We don't talk about those today. But if you'd like to see that, let us know. We have a link that we're going to be providing, and there's an additional comment section where you can let us know if there's other types of content you'd like to see. But essentially what will happen is this allows you to create now a registration form that where it creates an atmosphere of, hey, here are all of our speakers for today. And we want you to register with your name, email, things like, what do you do for work, right? Those are some optional fields you can put in. But what will happen is people will sign up through that registration form, and then they'll get a link to join that session. Okay, so we filled out all of our details. I think we're about ready. Let's go ahead and send this off now in the top right corner. And there is our new meeting that we just created together. Now, when we double click into it, it's a very similar experience to what we viewed on an invite that we got invited to, except now that we're the organizer, we have the ability to change all of this information, right? Oops, sorry, y'all. Things like adding users to an invite or updating the title, choosing whether or not it's repeated. Basically, everything that we went through, we can make changes. But I want to bring our attention back up to the ribbon. And in the ellipse menu, my screen's a bit smaller, so this may not be collapsed in an ellipse for you. However, we have a new button here, which is our meeting options. Inside these meeting options is where you can establish permissions other than the defaults. So things like who can bypass the lobby, right? I don't know if you've ever tried to join a meeting, maybe of a customer of yours or a partner, and it said, hey, we're going to let the organizers know you're here and waiting. And then they let you in, that is a lobby. You can choose which users get stuck in that lobby. Maybe you want everyone or only yourself and your co-organizers, or just the people in your org. You can also do that specifically for callers, what we mentioned earlier with the dial-in number, those users too. You can also choose to have co-organizers, which essentially give them admin level permissions to the meeting invite. This is really useful, especially, and I would even speak from my own personal example, when maybe there's a person that's dedicated to creating events, but there's other people that are actually directly handling it. This is a really great way to ensure that they have admin level rights when the meeting is going on. So if I came in here and I search for the participants that have been added to this invite, I want to look for both the directors here. And I want to add them as co-organizers in the event that I can't make it. You can also choose who can present, right? Everyone, only specific people, or only me and my co-organizers, right? Next is the device settings, things like allowing mics or cameras for your attendees, things like recording automatically. So the moment that someone hops into the meeting, it automatically starts that recording. Allowing meeting chat or reactions, enabling Q&A, right? Providing cart captions, which cart captions are a specific type of caption that are available within Teams. It is just something you have to enable. And then language interpretation as well. But I went ahead and changed what I needed to change. Let's go ahead and click save. And just like that, those permissions have been applied before the meeting even began. This is something that you can change even as the meeting is going along. We'll get there in a little bit. Let's go ahead and now hop into our meeting. We're going to click join in the top right. And you'll notice now that a separate window has been opened for us. So if you're in the desktop app, if you second guess yourself at all during this session, whether or not you're using the desktop version of Teams or the web-based version, this is your solidified way to know. If you're using the desktop app, your meeting will open in a separate window. If you're using the web-based version, it's done within the same window. But here's our pre-meeting screen. This is where we can set ourselves up for success before the meeting even begins, with things like turning on our camera, which can be found here on the left side. And one feature that's not showing for me, and this is one of those that I cannot show you guys, and right here, you'll find your background effects. Your background effects are your way of keeping your privacy a priority, especially if you're working from home. This will apply things like a custom image or one provided through Teams, or even blurring the background. Then off to the right is changing up your audio. Most likely you won't even have to touch this. Usually your computer will remember your defaults. This is if you move back and forth between maybe a home office and then the work office, and there's different audio setups. You can just confirm that they're configured appropriately here. I will say though that by default, your camera is, your microphone is usually toggled on before you join a meeting. I would just make sure as a best practice to mute it before hopping into a session. That way, especially if you're maybe hopping from meeting to meeting, one bled over into another and the meeting already started, you don't want to cause those interruptions by hopping in with your microphone on. So this is just something to pay attention to in the future to ensure that you're not causing any disruptions. Let's go ahead and join. All right, and so this is what your meeting screen will look like. And whenever you go into when we go into the calling section a little bit later, you'll notice that this layout is almost the exact same. So when we get to that section, we won't harp on it too much, but I do want to show y'all some key features that are found within calls. Okay, so in the desktop app, your meeting control bar is actually pinned to the top, whereas the web-based version will have a floating bar right around here at the bottom. This first tab in our meeting control bar is the People's tab, and it looks like Lynn just joined us. Awesome. Thank you, Lynn. In the participants panel, we can see all of the users that are within this meeting and others that have been invited that aren't quite here yet. We can actually pick out a user from this list. For example, if I needed Lydia, I can request her to join and it will actually start ringing her in her Teams client. This is also where you can search for a user. Maybe I forgot to add someone, or we get to a topic and I'm like, you know what? I know someone that can actually speak on this better than even myself. Let me go ahead and invite them in. And if I wanted to just do a quick search for Joni, I can search her because she's in my org and call her directly into my meeting. Now, right above that search bar, you have the ellipse menu. And in here, we have things like downloading an attendance list. We'll actually look at how we can do this even after the event is ended. And then below that, you have lock the meeting, which essentially takes your meeting and makes it to where no one else can join the moment you lock it. Now, the manage permissions, the reason I skipped that is because, oh, look at that. It's the same exact thing that we looked at earlier. So now we can manage these permissions even as the meeting is going along. What's really cool about this too is, let's say that I wanted to change who can mute themselves, right? Or unmute themselves. I want to make sure that my attendees cannot unmute their microphone to really ensure that there's no distractions or interruptions. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And just like that, I have applied that new permission and setting to this meeting. Neither of us have to leave this session. It's applied in real time. So if I were to go in and say, hey, Lynn, I'm actually going to make you an attendee. If I click on the ellipse here, I see some settings for her. I can make her an attendee. And once that happens, you'll see that her microphone has been disabled automatically because I made it so. I can even come in now into the ellipse menu and allow her microphone. So if I allow Lynn's microphone out of all the attendees, Lynn can now come off mute and speak her piece if she had a question. Or I could go back in, re-disable her mic or her camera. But this allows you a more in-depth control over your meetings. So that way it's not just black and white. It's also a way for you to get all the shades in between. Now you'll notice that there's other features here too. Things like, I'm actually going to promote her to a presenter just because there's other things in the future I want to show you guys. There we go. Now there's other things here too that we can look at, things like Spotlight for Everyone or Pin for Me. These actually provide a very similar experience. One's just for your own use and one is for everyone in the meeting. Pin for Me allows me to really just focus on this one user out of everyone else. So it'll take her camera or her content and blow it up a bit bigger compared to everyone else's. You'll notice that even whenever I did that just now, the meeting shifted to focus on her content. That's Pin. We also have Spotlight, which is really great to highlight video of someone in the meeting for everyone. So if I go ahead and click Spotlight, it gives us this warning. And now the same experience that I did for Pin does the same thing for everyone now rather than just myself. And then lastly, you have remove from meeting. Hopefully you never have to use that feature, but it is available and you can remove someone from a meeting if needed. Okay, next is our chat. So chat is a really great way to have conversations without interruptions, a great way to ask questions or just share thoughts and ideas or documents, right? You'll go to the bottom of this chat and you can see all the exact same communication options that we find in our private one-on-one or group chats or even in our channel posts, all the exact same features found here. So if I wanted to share a document from my OneDrive, I can click on the paperclip icon and go to OneDrive here and share this market analysis with my team. Let's take a look at this together. There we go. And just like that, I shared a document. This is something that can be found even after the meeting is ended. Well, before, during, and after. When we conclude this meeting, I'll show you guys what that looks like and where to find it. I'm going to say that a couple times about a few different things. Just be prepared for that. But it's all useful stuff. Next is your reactions. This is another really great way to acknowledge something that someone said, but more in a quiet way without interruptions. And it brings more personality to your meetings. A lot of times in these virtual spaces, we either don't have our cameras on and we can't show that personality and those facial features. So these reactions allow us to bring that personality in. So things like laughter, right? You can see next to my name here at the bottom right, a little emoji popped up. If Lynn were to do it, it would have it same thing for her, and it would actually have like a little floating one that comes up. But like I said, it's a really great way to bring acknowledgement and other personality items into your meetings. Now, there's another really important one here, which is raise hand. It's a great way to handle a Q&A. So what will happen if Lynn raises her hand? We'll get a little ping and a ring around her name and a bunch of highlights and things going around like we're seeing right now. So we have this gold ring. We have a couple emojis indicating that Lynn's raising her hand and even a ping up here on the People's tab. And the cool thing about this is it'll actually track the order in which people raise their hand for us so that we can call them in order by this little number next to the hand emoji right here. And I can go in and lower her hand. Maybe she forgot to, and I don't want to I don't want to later on be like, hey, Lynn, do you still have a question or was this from earlier? Just to avoid that, let's say she forgot, I can actually come into the ellipsis menu and lower her hand if needed. The next item that we have in our list in the meeting control bar is rooms or breakout rooms. We will not be talking about this today. This is a section or a training solely on its own. So if this is, again, is something you'd want to see, you can put that in the additional comment section. Next is our apps. So just like in our channels or in our chats, we can, and how we can pin applications to those tabs. This is the same concept, but for your meetings. Just note that although, yes, it utilizes the same list of apps in those environments, there's not a meeting version of all of those apps, so you may not have access to everything you had before. I hope I said that right. But I'll show you one example, which is polls here. So I want to be able to create a polling system within my meeting to find a different way to gauge the thoughts and processes of my team. So I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now I have a polls tab in my meeting control bar. This is where I can create polling questions and send these out to my users in this meeting. And this is something that would be traced even after my meeting. So I can go ahead and launch that. Now, this isn't a training about this polling system. I just want to show you how this is a resource you can have before, during, and after too. Okay, so let's move off from apps here and into the more ellipses. There's a lot here. I promise you it doesn't take as long to get to know as you might think. We're going to fly through this. A lot of this stuff I can't actually show you guys, so I'll just speak on it to the best of my ability, and then we'll move on, and then we'll be soon to wrap up with this section of the training. So this first item is our device settings. This is just looking at your audio and video settings if you need to. There's also additional video settings that even my demo tenant isn't showing. So right here we have mirror my video. You can even now turn on a beauty filter like you can on your cell phone. So there's some other video options here as well that you can take a look at. You can look at your call health. I'm going to be really honest. You may not even look at this, but this is here in case you need it. If you're noticing that your bandwidth can't handle a meeting that you're in, you can take a look at exactly what's causing the most to eat that data up. Whether that's a video, audio, or network thing, you can check all that call health here. Again, your meeting options, those web browsers that we looked at before, changing up our permissions, there is now a panel dedicated to that within your meeting. So you don't have to open up a separate web browser anymore. You can actually do that directly within your meeting here. Next is the meeting notes. So this is a way to take notes and tie it directly to a meeting. So that way it's easier to find later. Just note that whenever you take notes in this fashion, this is shared with others that are a part of the meeting. So if I go to take notes, this will direct me out of that meeting environment, sorry, and bring me to my notes area. So now I can start taking notes here. There's a title to the section and then the contents. And you have all of your formatting stuff across the top where you can bring in links, bolding, paragraphing, bullet points. You name it, it's there. Next is our meeting info. Basically everything on our invite, date, time, title, dial-in number, join link, right? This dedicates an entire tab for that information. So that's everything about the meeting itself. Let's go down to this next section, which is the overall layout of your users. By default, you have the gallery, which just means that upwards of 9 users will be shown on a screen at a time. If you have more than 9 people that are on camera, maybe you're looking at something like the large gallery view where you can get all those users shown on camera at the same time. It does reduce the size of their cameras, but that way you can see everyone in one place. Then lastly, you have together mode, which provides a virtual shared space, kind of like an auditorium style where everyone that's on camera is placed in a seat. Their backgrounds are taken out and it's just them, and that creates a more together-esque feel. Next is gallery at top, right? So this is really just a preference thing. Usually your cameras are stacked, the additional cameras are stacked up, going up the meeting. You can actually change that to where it runs across the top. So if I do gallery at top, it now forces everyone across the top of the meeting. Next is focus on content, another one I can't really show you. If someone's sharing their screen and going through a presentation, you can actually have it focus on the content and it'll push out the cameras of this invite. So that way you're not seeing everyone fidgeting and doing other things. You can just focus solely on that. And then lastly is full screen in this section. This next section here is things like turning on live captions in case you need them. So that way we have everything tagged in real time. What's cool about these live captions, it'll actually tag the user's name that's speaking. So if Lynn was actually speaking to me right now and I had live captions turned on, it would have her name tagged, Lynn, and then everything she's speaking afterwards. And there's actually a section below. So if I turn on live captions, choose the spoken language, there will be a section here at the bottom that those captions will generate. You can also now turn on Speaker Coach within your meetings, which if you've ever played around with this in PowerPoint, this will essentially give it a report and tell you things like, hey, slow down on your pacing, look at how often you use filler words, make sure you're using more inclusive language or unique language, right? So Speaker Coach is a phenomenal tool. I've even used it on my presentations. I'm not saying I'm the best speaker even to this date, because I'm not, but it's a super great tool to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward. Next is start recording. So if you ever want to record a session, you would go to this ellipse menu down to the bottom, click start recording. And once this little dot in the top left corner turns red, that's how you know for sure a meeting is being recorded. Now it will provide everyone in the invite that a recording has started, like we're seeing right here, just so everyone's in the know that they are being recorded. That is something that will be found a little bit later, and I'll show you guys where to find that once we close out of this invite. But for now, I'm just going to stop the recording in that same ellipse menu where we found the start option. All right, so this very last section at the bottom is helping us create a more comfortable and distractionless meeting. So this first option is don't show chat bubbles. This is something that's relatively new to the meeting environment. And what I want Lynn to do is just post something in the chat. So since I don't have my chat panel open, what's going to happen now is every new chat that comes through or a new message that comes through our chat will have a bubble, just like we're seeing here, that pops up at the top. As a presenter, that may be very distracting for me. It might not, but let's say that I am one of those individuals. I can actually turn that off. and choose to do not show chat bubbles. Now, those will no longer pop up at the top. We also have where we can mute notifications in case those are distracting and turning off incoming video. Now, I've seen this been used for a slew of reasons. You easily get distracted by seeing all these people on camera, or your computer just simply can't handle the bandwidth. The more people that are on camera, the more it slows down your internet. Not everyone has the best internet. So you can actually go in and turn off incoming video. Now, it doesn't go into their computer and turn their camera off. It just eliminates it on your computer. Everyone else can still see each other. You just will see profile pictures like we're currently looking. Okay, so that is the ellipse menu. Next is your camera and microphone toggles. Again, mine are disabled just because I'm using this virtual machine and I can't enable them. But this is where you could mute and unmute and look at your camera. The last thing that we're going to look at is the share tray. I'm actually sharing my screen with you guys today. Well, actually, technically a window. But the difference between screen and window, screen allows you to show your attendees everything on your computer. So if I needed to go into a web browser, you guys are going to see that. If I open up my start menu, you'll see that, and open up another app, see it. That is screen. If I go into share window, you'll see that it's only showing me the items that I have currently open. So maybe I only want you guys to look at the Word document that I'm going to work on with y'all. I can choose to only share this one window. And now you'll see that there's this red line on our screen. This is indicating to us what we're sharing. If it's above the taskbar, that means we're only sharing a window. And if I switch over to this web browser, notice how the red line goes away. That means that my users aren't seeing this web browser window. They're only still seeing that Word document. So that's the difference between screen and window. Now, if you're choosing to share a video with your users and you need the sound to be shared as well, ensure that you turn on this check mark here to include computer sound. It's found right at the top. You just click that first, and then you choose what you want to share. Next is our whiteboard. This is a more interactive experience with your users where we can come in and let's turn these options off. Hold on. This is where you can get a bit more interactive with your users. This is where we can all come together and utilize these markers and write together. We can get a bit more hands-on with maybe our brainstorming experience, or maybe we just want to use this to decompress, right? Either way, I've seen these used for a mixture of reasons. Let's write a little something there. We can see that Lydia's even writing off on the side over here. Now, there's other features that are available within Whiteboard rather than just writing. You can see those out to the side. However, this isn't a training session for Whiteboard, which we also have as well. That there's plenty of other things you can do, other forms of media you can bring into this whiteboard. Again, this is something that you can find afterwards, which we'll look at in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing though. And look at our last option. Now, I won't be able to show you this as of right now, but it's another really cool feature called PowerPoint Live, where if there's a presentation in PowerPoint that you want to present to this audience, usually these will start generating stuff here for you. Or if you're not seeing the one you want, you can actually do a browse for it. And it will generate that slide deck immediately into your meeting invite without even having to touch the PowerPoint software. So I no longer have to go into Start, hit PowerPoint, then find it, then click slideshow, then share my screen, all yada, yada, yada. This now is all done directly right here. And what's really cool about that is as the presenter, it actually gives you presenter view and your audience is just seeing the slides. So if you added notes to your slides, if you want to utilize the laser pointer or the markup annotation feature, all of those will be available to you still in that PowerPoint Live presenter view. Okay, so this is all of the features within the meeting. Let's go ahead and wrap this up, look at our after event resources, and then we'll briefly talk about calls and end off with our Q&A. So thank you, Lynn. I'm going to go ahead and leave. Now, as an organizer, you have two options here, which is to leave the meeting, meaning everyone else is still collaborating, or I can click this drop down and choose to end the meeting, and this forces everyone out. I'm gonna go ahead and end it. I don't want anyone else in here. Let's close out all that stuff that I opened up. And if we go back to our meeting invite here, double click into it, we can see that now across the top, we have things like our chat. This shows us all of our history, right? Here's that meeting recording that we used earlier. We have other things that we submitted, like our polls, and there's that document we shared. Any documents that are shared or any recordings that are made are actually automatically tucked away for you in the Files tab. So it makes it a bit easier to find later. We don't have to scroll through the entire chat history to find these items. They're actually tucked away for us. Here's those meeting notes that we typed up as the session was going along. Even our whiteboard that we all interacted with together. This is something that you can also even make changes to or just view outside of the meeting. Same thing for those meeting notes. Here's our attendance log, where we can look at things like who joined, what time did they join or leave, and how long were they in the meeting for, right? And we can download an attendee report in the top right corner. If you utilize breakout rooms, that's a tab, and then also any other applications that you added can be viewed here. Let's go ahead and move over into calls here. So just like on your cell phone, it's a very identical experience. Every user within Teams is given a work phone number that is dedicated to your account. So you can utilize this for your customer calls, your partner calls, so you don't have to use your own personal cell phone anymore. This is where you have things like speed dial off to the side or other contacts. You have your call history, missed, incoming, and even voicemails. Yes, you can receive voicemails in Teams. You have your contacts list. So if we look at the top here, our contacts will actually be synonymous with Outlook. So if you have contacts that have been added there, you don't have to do double work. These will actually be brought over for you and vice versa. So if I add a contact within Teams, it'll be added inside Outlook. So you have an address book dedicated for your work environment too. Make it super easy to have contacts labeled here. And all I have to do to call someone, I'm going to go ahead and call Lydia again. I'm sorry, Lynn. So I'm going to go ahead and type her name in and click call. Like I said, it's a very, very similar setup. We get a separate window. We have our controls across the top. But now if we click on the ellipsy items here, we have options like putting Lynn on hold or immediately transferring her to another user. Or maybe I want to consult someone and give them an update as to what we've talked about and then transfer them. I could even consult, then transfer. So she's put on hold. What will happen now is I'm provided this window. Let's say that I'm going to end up transferring her to Lee. I can either chat or click this drop down and call him. And then after that, I could choose to transfer to Lee. Or just simply come back and resume our call after I've talked to Lee and gotten some insight from him. Now, I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. This session is usually a really long one, so it's one of our longer ones, rather. So I just want to make sure that we have time for questions. And if there's no questions, I'll show you guys that adding a channel to a meeting invite that I said I would in the beginning. So I will pass this off to Rochelle to walk us through any questions that we need to answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bubba, for your demonstration. We've got a lot of great information. One of the questions being, is this session being recorded or will be available? So yes, all that great information that Bubba was sharing, this actual session is being recorded and it'll be available for you to the next 90 days. You're able to rejoin it by just joining the link that you did today as well, and then the recording will pop up. And then at that point, you'll be able to forward or pause at any part and then just kind of practice it at home as well. So on that, we've got all the other questions answered. Please let us know. Go ahead and drop in any other questions that you have, and we'll be happy to support you from there.
Awesome. Thank you. So with this additional time and seeing if we can get any last minute questions, I'll show you guys what it looks like to have a channel meeting. I'm just going to very quickly, let's see. We're just going to call this the test 1, 2, 3. And instead of adding users, I want to be able to create a post for a meeting that essentially invites an entire team or channel. You know, your teams can have hundreds of people in it. So instead of writing out each individual member of that team to add them to an invite, I can actually just add it to a channel here. So let's say the Mark8 project team, and I want to add it to the design channel. And I click send. Yes, it still appears on my calendar, but if I go over to Teams here and find, there it is, that channel, we can see that there's a meeting that's been scheduled here. There's the meeting, all the details. Now our users can come into this post and just click on it, see the meeting invite details, and choose to join it from here. Now, one of the other things that are different is where our chat is found. It is tied to the meeting itself technically, but it's also found here underneath the post within our channel. It's actually going to be all the replies. So I just say, good morning, everyone. This is where all of our communications are going to be held. Your files that are shared are actually found here. A lot of your resources will be found within that channel environment. You'll see there's not even a files tab anymore. That's because it's going to be for that channel. Also, something to note too, usually with your channel meetings, you can't add additional apps to them. Keep that in mind. So you can see there's no plus sign anymore right here in our tabs window. But we still have things like breakout rooms, attendance, scheduling assistant, chats, right? So it just slightly changes up the layout of these sessions. You can't change things like categories or showing as busy, right? But you still have things like your meeting options, response options, and registration available to you. So just keep that in mind. There's some things that you can't add or change in a channel invite, but it does make it really easy to create something like an open office hours or something that's super quick and impromptu, right? So just keep that in mind. That's the key differences between the two types of meetings. We have a couple minutes. Rochelle, one last check-in with questions. Is there any new ones that came in?
No, sir, we're good to go.
Awesome. Okay, so I can't see the chat right now, but I'm sure that Rochelle already posted this because she's awesome. There's going to be a link in our, oh, hold on, before I get ahead of myself, I also have another screen to put up too. Give me a moment on that. But there's going to be a link that's posted. With this link, oh, I'm going to have to unshare my screen again. That's right. With this link, you can provide us feedback. Ultimately, this is for me and my presentation skills and what you thought about the content. Ultimately, this is something I get to look at every day and how I get to consistently improve. Ultimately, the best that I'm performing in these sessions is the best type of content I can bring back to you guys. So if you don't mind letting me know, that'd be super greatly appreciated. But with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to our friends at PCA. And thank you all for giving us your time. We'll see y'all in the future.
Great. Thank you, Bubba and Rochelle. We'll go ahead and conclude here. I do want to reiterate that we have 2 more sessions happening this year, including top favored teams integrations and how to become a power user. So please visit pcatg.com/events to learn more about the next sessions. If you ever have any questions about your Microsoft licensing or features, you can also reach out to PCA directly at info@pcatg.com. We also encourage you to visit our LinkedIn, where we provide helpful hints, details for upcoming events, and free resources. So please keep a lookout for the recording from today's session and our raffled winner of the Lenovo gift card. And thanks again to our speakers today and everyone who attended. We hope you have a great rest of your day.